Okay, now you all have to behave.
Okay. Are we, is it right at 7 o'clock? Do we want to go
Oh, we
ahead
got
and
a
start?
minute. We got a minute. So,
Give it a minute or two?
yep. Um, trying to think. Sorry, and you'll do all the announcements, so we'll have it
Yeah,
all.
I can do that. We already got, what is it, like 32 people in, so this is good.
Yeah. We have. Who brought the snacks?
I just finished mine.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll give it another minute or two. We're right at 7. So.
let's see. I think I have made Cliff's a co-host, Michael's a co-host. I'm going to make Chuck a co-host too, just because. Or can I make him a co-host? Because I just had a little flicker on my lights. So if I go south, somebody will still be in the, still be able to carry on the meeting. How's that?
Yeah, is my voice isn't cracking up? Is that
Oh,
it sounded?
it's good.
No, yours is
Sounds
actually
like
really
there's somebody's got a puppy in the background.
Yeah, that's Kathy has a puppy in the background.
Okay.
Take care
There
of
you
it.
go.
Yeah, no problem. We'll everybody will mute when Cliff starts his thing and we'll be good to go. All right. I would say if you're ready, go ahead and
Okay.
start.
Yeah.
All right, I just had to do one thing there real quick. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and get going here. Just a few minutes after 7. Thank you all for joining tonight. Apologize for the fact that we've got the weather out there and we weren't able to do this one in person, but it looks like we've got 30 something people on right now in that. So great turnout here for a Zoom only meeting in that. This is actually our first presentation meeting of the year. Thank you, Cliff Lawson, for joining us tonight as the presenter. I'll go through a more formal introduction of Cliff here in a moment. Now, but first of all, I'll go through just a few quick announcements, some of the other things that we have coming up here over the next few months. First competition night is February 1st, so that's the first Wednesday. I guess that's about 2 weeks away from tonight. This one is open. The judge is to be announced soon, which means in other words, yet, but I will get that taken care of here soon. February 15th, 2 weeks after that, we have presentation night, and that one is Learning to See Creatively with Greg Holden. For the 1st of March is an exhibition night. Again, we just did one of those a couple weeks ago in that. Again, for those that haven't participated in those, you enter up to like 4 images in that we have open discussion on it. You can talk a little bit about the image and get some feedback, not a judge score on it necessarily, but just get good feedback in that from those who are in attendance. March 15th is Lightroom Tips, and that is with Lone Tree Photographer Club Photographer of the Year the past 2 years, Dave Purcell, who's on here tonight. And I'm imagining that, again, with it being Lightroom Tips, he'll cover, again, a lot of the Lightroom features and so forth that we've become accustomed to over the years in that, as well as some of they've got a lot of new features in that, masking and so forth in that. So look forward to that one on March 15th. April 5th, we've got a competition night, and that one is on portraits of people, pets, and silhouettes. So portraits is one of those categories. So pay close attention tonight because we'll learn plenty of really good tips in that here over the next hour and a half or so. Let's see. Then we've got the last one I have here on my list is April 19th, and that's Eye versus Vision, and that is with Cole Thompson. So again, that is April 19th. He does a lot of really interesting black and white images, but also gets into vision and that. So a lot of real good programs coming up here over, I guess that's over the next 3.5, 4 months on that.
And
Another thing I was going to bring up. Go ahead.
Cliff's going to be the judge for our portraits.
Oh yeah, I should have said that too. So Cliff will be the judge for that competition that we have with portraits.
I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure you will. Let's see here. Then we have one other announcement here. We have the Exploring the Light image competition and show with the city of Lone Tree. Bruce, do you know if that, I know that before I had mentioned, or I had notes that that was going to launch this week, but I haven't seen anything on that yet.
You're
Yeah, it's
muted.
from the 19th through the 24th.
Oh, 19th. Okay. Okay. So
Did you see something posted on that, Carino?
Yes, it was online.
Okay, good. Then there you go.
okay. Okay. I'll take a look at that. So if it's online, we'll get information on that. So we've got, let's see, let's see, because so the launch is, I guess, right about now. During is February, it's a hard word to say, February 25th to March 3rd. The load in is April 4th. The show reception will be April 8th. That's actually the day before Easter, from 4 to 6. The judge this year is Shannon Squires Taves, a award-winning photographer in Colorado Springs. While she specializes in portraits and composites and portraits are a couple of the categories that are in this, along with I think 6 others. There's a total of 8 categories. But she's also quite familiar with other genres of photography in there also. So now I'll go ahead and do a quick introduction of tonight's guest. Cliff Lawson first took up photography during college in the 1960s. It's primarily a hobby until 2003 when he retired from a career as an airline pilot. And again, in retirement, looking for, we'll say, something to do, he sought professional photography training, became a professional photographer with certifications, including master photographer craftsman through the Professional Photographers of America, specializes in portrait photography, but no weddings and not very many landscapes. I think he just doesn't like to get up that early in the morning for that. Most of
That's a fact. That's it, man. You got it.
So now there is such a thing as getting landscapes in the evening, or like Chuck's background. There are also the nightscapes, but anyways, those are the other parts of landscape photography. Cliff has several awards for his, I'll say, high school senior photos, headshots, other portraits. He's also become a very good videographer. I got a chance to learn how hard it is on the other side of his camera with a video session. And I think every time I paused, I would roll my eyes and got a quick, well, we can't take that one. That one's not going to work. Let's see, volunteer activities. Also, he's been really active with volunteering for organizations and that. I know a couple of years ago, I guess it was before COVID, but you did a presentation here for our club here in Lone Tree on your veterans project. That was the one in which you provided high quality portrait images to, I believe it was 50 military veterans, all the way from World War II, Korean, Vietnam, and up to the current era. And also, volunteering with the Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, and a lot of other things that he does for the local communities and so forth and that. So with that, I'll go ahead and let Cliff take over the program tonight on portraits.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. I'll be judging your April session. So tonight, I'll be showing you some things that I look for, and it's just the way I do portraits. And by no means do I think that I am the portrait photographer. I'm sure there are people in your club that are phenomenal, but I'm going to show you the way I do it. And so it's kind of in 2 pieces, which is what I talked to Bruce about. We'll start out with some of the photography for the portrait basics, and I'll show you some examples of the different lighting styles and how those improve the picture. And then we'll talk a little bit about that veteran project. But what I didn't do, and I had the previous presentation with you guys, I didn't go through how I retouch them. And that's what we'll do tonight. I'll show you how I take those images from the raw file to the finished file. We'll do it quickly because ordinarily it takes me about 45 minutes per image. We won't take that long. One of the things that really irritates me about some classes, especially portraits, the teacher will start talking about some retouching. And when he or she starts to do examples, they keep doing the same thing. It's kind of like after about 2 minutes, you go, I got it. Oh, move on, man, I got it. But they go on for 10 or 15 minutes to do everything as though that picture that they're using for instruction is going to be sold to a client. So I won't do that to you. We'll give you a couple of examples of how things work, and then we'll move on. There are no secrets to this stuff. You know, a guy that has a lot of a nice online presence, and I've been to some of his classes, a guy by the name of Joel Grimes. He talks about the secrets. There aren't any secrets. Everything is out there on the internet, in classes. Maybe there were secrets 30 years ago before the internet, 20 years ago, but nowadays with all the classes and all the instructors, everything that's out there, it's all there. So I'm just going to show you my way of doing things. You may have a way that you do it that's different, and that's fine. I'm just going to show you my way. What I have here tonight is I have this setup that I did for some other organizations that I did Zooms for. So this is a 3-camera operation here. I can go to another camera with a little bit of a wider view. And when I want to show you some details on some things, we can cut to this. And this is what runs all this. This is a little thing called an A10 Mini. And I can control 4 cameras here, microphones here, some graphics over here. What you see here is a monitor that shows me the next camera up. So I can see when I push the button, what's going to show. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the basics, and then we'll share my screen and I'll show you some examples. One of the really famous photographers, and I wish I could remember his name, says when you're doing a portrait, one of the things that makes a portrait is the subject has to be a part of the process. In other words, street photography, candid photography, they may be great pictures, but they're not portraits. That's his view. I kind of agree with that. The subject has to be involved in this, and they have to be engaged in it. And you can tell by their expressions whether they're just kind of lights on, nobody's home, or they're engaged with the process. I talk to whether it's a high school senior or these veterans. I spend a lot of time just talking to them, especially with the veterans. A lot of these guys, they're not too sure that this is a good thing, I guess. You know, they're nervous about it. So I may talk to them for a while before I even really get involved with the camera. Before I forget about it, I want to mention that's I think he's on tonight. The previous club member, Phil Blyton. Phil helps me with these veterans. In fact, helps me with my high school seniors and my veteran sessions. He attended a lighting class that I did, geez, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And he said, hey, if you ever need a help and assistant, let me know. Well, we've been working together for all that time, and it is invaluable to have somebody, that other pair of eyes. Because, the photographer, we get involved in, you're looking at the camera, you're looking at the subject, but someone sees that the tie's not straight, that the necklace isn't centered. It's invaluable. It's not that you can't do it yourself, but it really is great having an assistant. And Phil really helps me, and I appreciate the time that he spends helping me do this. You want to slow down. I shoot on a tripod virtually 100% of the time, whether it's in the studio, whether it's high school seniors. I used to give some classes. I don't do too much anymore, but I'll talk about using a tripod. And they say, I don't want to do that. It slows me down. I think, you're damn right it does. It's what it's supposed to do. It stops this click, 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 click baloney. It makes you slow down. And the big thing is it allows you to step out from behind that camera like that. Instead of having someone looking at this, you can have the camera over here. You're talking to them. They're telling their stories, making them laugh, and you're taking pictures. And it makes a huge, huge difference that you stay engaged with the subject. So especially with the veterans, I'll be taking pictures while they talk. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, Bruce, if you would look at the chat it's too difficult to do the class and look at the chat. If people have questions and you put it in chat and just stop me, or you guys can just holler, you have a question. I'll,
Sure,
any
we can.
questions you
I
have
I
before-
watched the chat, so I'll let you know if I see any questions pop
that'd be
in.
good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Some people look great not looking at down the camera lens. You'll see that in some of my pictures that looking off to the side is really can be a pretty cool portrait. Most of the people I have looking at the camera, but looking right down the camera is fine, but looking off to the side, looking somewhere else, that can make a great picture. Another thing I do, and some people would argue with this, I show pictures, the back of the camera, or I shoot tethered in the studio. I show them pictures as we go along and let them know that, this is looking good. I think it gets them engaged and kind of relaxes them. And I don't show them necessarily the whole session, of course, but just let them know that, you're doing a good job and this is working out for you. So I know some people don't like to do that, but I think it's fine. Yeah, did you have a question there, Bruce?
His voice isn't coming through. The question is Jeff Scott asked the question is, do you use a silent shutter?
I just purchased a Z9 last month, and I had a Z6 II. So the D850 didn't really have. I don't know if it didn't have a silent shutter or not. To tell you the truth, I think maybe it did. No, I don't.
It's got a quiet, but it didn't have a silent.
Yeah, and there's no question about, since I use artificial lighting for everything. We'll talk about that. There's no question when the camera fires because the flash goes off. But I do know that there are people who use that silent shutter. The people don't know when the picture is being taken, which can be good. But I don't, to answer your question. Okay, let's talk about, I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see if I can make this work. I practiced earlier, so I hope I don't make a fool of myself here. Let's see, here we go here. And I want to pull up Lone Tree, basic lighting styles here. Let's see. All right, you seeing something there?
We just see the Finder screen where it shows the files, but we don't see the slides.
Okay.
Actual slides.
Huh. Well,
Might have to shift screens. I know in Zoom, you have to pick different screens.
yeah, let me, I thought I picked that. Hang on a second here. Where do we? Usually when you say I'm going to stop and start all over again.
Yeah.
Let me go to
That's a lot of people do. They'll
Share
stop
screen.
and then reshare.
here. And you see the Finder now, right?
Correct. See the Finder.
All right. Now, do you see the Keynote?
Nope, Keynote's not popped up yet.
All right. Let's try this then. Let's do. Here we go. This will do it. There we go. Now do you have it?
Yep.
That's it.
See it. Mhm.
All right. Okay, so some of the basic lighting styles, and this works for studio light and natural light as well. So let's look at some of the basic styles that we have here. And let's see here. I need to get this where it says play. Here we go. Okay. So this is loop lighting. And if you look at that shadow, the nose shadow goes down and off to the side, but it doesn't touch the other cheek shadow at all. It leaves that open space. So that makes a loop. And there was a, I can't think of his name now. There's a photographer that said, light illuminates, but the shadows define. So shadows with portrait photography are really important. It's what gives the face those 3 dimensions, gives it dimensionality. So that's loop lighting. And here's an example. You can see there's a little loop that comes off the boy's nose there. Same one you can see off to the side. Same with this young lady here. Notice that the shadow doesn't touch the far side of the cheek. That's Rembrandt lighting. So when that shadow comes down and touches that shadow on the far side and leaves that little triangle of light. That's what they call Rembrandt lighting, supposedly named after the painter that lit things, much of his was lit in that fashion. So there's Rembrandt lighting with the person. That shadow, no shadow touches the other shadow, little triangle of light under her eye, and that's Rembrandt light. You can get that with natural light as well. This is butterfly or paramount lighting, so called because back in the 40s, the kind of glamour light that they did left that little shadow under the nose that they say it looks, I don't see that it looks like a butterfly myself, but that's what it's called. Paramount or butterfly lighting. And here's that same young lady with a little shadow under the nose. That's because the light is pretty much on the camera axis. There it is again. Again. And split lighting. I don't have any examples of split lighting because I don't use it. But if the light is relatively low and just shines across the face like that, that would be a split light. It can be very dramatic. I just don't use it. And there's flat light. Flat light, sometimes it gets knocked as kind of boring. But used properly, it can be really quite flattering because those other lighting styles I showed you, they do show up wrinkles, skin imperfections as that light, just like you landscape guys, when you get that low sunlight, it brings out the details in the landscape. Well, the lighting that sweeps across the face does the same thing. And if you've got the complexion for it, it's not a big deal. But as we get older, it does show everything. So flat lighting, it can be boring, but it can also be very flattering. It depends on how you use it. There's the flat lighting on that high school senior there. The lighting was pretty much close to the camera axis. Another one. Here's an example of this is really bad. It's very flat. There's no dimension to this young lady's face whatsoever. The background is just as bright as her face. And generally speaking, keep this in mind for your people photography in April. Generally speaking, you want the face to be the brightest part of the image. There are exceptions, but in this case, that bright wall, whatever's behind, runs right through her head. So if the lighting is flat and it's very, very bright. So I'm not even sure why I took this, but it serves as a great example of what not to do. Then we have monster lighting. Again, I don't have any examples of this. There's a famous photographer, Arnold Newman, I think it's Arnold Newman, is Jewish. And he was commissioned to take a picture of Mr. Krupp of the famous German Krupp Industries. And this was back in I don't know if it was in the late 40s, early 50s. He lit him like this with the scene of his factory behind him to kind of show how evil he thought he was. I don't think the guy knew it at the time that he was being lit that way for a reason. Okay, top light on an overcast day. Now, I always use, well, maybe I shouldn't say always, 99% of the time, I use strobes, flash with my work, even outside. You can have nice soft light on an overcast day, and the light is kind of like this. It's just straight down. And with what amounts to a huge softbox overhead, you think, wow, that's really nice soft light. But what you get with it is raccoon eyes. You get paramount lighting there, butterfly lighting, but you got these dark eye sockets because the eyebrows are hiding. There's no life in the eyes whatsoever. And a lot of these photographers who say, oh yes, I'm a natural light photographer. This is what their images look like. I'll be out shooting a high school senior, and Phil Blyton can back me up on this. We'll see people out there, no reflectors, no strobes, no flash, and just taking natural light pictures, but they're not modifying the light in any way. And if it's an overcast day, this is what they get. You need use a little fill flash. Now, my example here, I put the flash on the camera. I wouldn't do it this way, but for my example, that's the way I'm doing it just for this example, but put the little fill flash in there. That's the same overhead light. Nothing's changed, no exposure changed, except adding just a little bit of flash to fill in under those eyebrows. So for your pictures for April, if you take them outside, use a reflector or use a little fill flash. We want to make sure that the eyes have life in them. Those little catch lights that are in the eyes, that's everything. That's what gives life to the eyes. I can remember this was probably 10 years ago. I was at some workshop on portraits, and the guy asked, "How do you get rid of those little lights in people's eyes?" Man, I'm always clearing out those lights. Everybody said, "No, you need those lights. That's what gives life to those eyes. Otherwise, the eyes are dead."
Hey,
So here's a face of a high school senior. It was, you can see the reflections in the sidewalk. It was a rainy day, overcast. She did happen to be under an umbrella here. So we blocked the top light, and I used my flash and a little softbox to add light with direction. And what, actually, when I stop sharing my screen, I'll show you what I used as a softbox.
Phil, or Cliff, we got a
Hey.
question.
Sure.
Michael wants to know, do you use reflectors outdoors instead of strobe lights for outdoor portraits?
No, I don't. I use the strobe lights. Reflectors can be just as good, but I guess it's because I have Phil. He's there to move the light for me. But no, there's nothing wrong with reflectors. Reflectors are great as long as you hold them high. A lot of times when I do see people using reflectors, they hold them low. Remember, you want to replicate the sun. So you want to make sure that nose shadow goes down, not up. So reflectors are great. Just hold them up high enough that you are giving the light direction and you're giving it the appropriate direction.
And be cautious about the wind.
Yeah.
It can wind up in Kansas.
Reflectors can be handy if you've got a mom that's kind of interfering with it. You say, "Hey, Mom, I got a job for you," and you give her the reflector, and you say, "You're a little close. Move back a little. No, a little farther. Move farther back than that." It takes care of Mom. Now here's a natural light picture. In fact, I went out with this young lady. Was one of my high school seniors. And right here, this is about 3 or 4 years after her senior year. Really pretty gal. But I wanted to go out, and we did about a 2-hour shoot with, I promised myself I would not use any strobes at all. We did all natural light. So this is here in Parker, in this, not an alley, but the area outside the office building. So there's these pillars behind her. To our left, there's no light because that's the offices. The top light is blocked, but all the light is the ambient light coming from our right. And if you notice, we've got loop lighting there. We've got that little triangle under her eye, and we've got shadows. So you can use natural light to replicate what we would get with strobes. Same thing as the same shoot. Again, we blocked the top light. That pillar on our right, her left, you can see that our right side of her face is darker than the left side. So we have shadows. There are some kinds of specialty lighting. I'm showing this just because I'm so proud of this. This is about 10 years ago, maybe not quite that long ago. This young lady was a hurdler, obviously. And when we took her senior pictures, she wanted to get pictures of her doing the hurdles. Well, it started to rain that day, so we had to call it quits. So I told her, I said, "Maddie, look, just be ready. Some night after dinner, we're going to get great weather and great clouds, and I'm going to call you, and we're going to run down to Ponderosa High School and take some pictures." This is the result of 4 Nikon SB800s circled around her. And she just kept doing her thing. And that sky was the sky. I mean, that's not some drop in. That we just got really lucky and got that beautiful sky. Now, I thought this picture was great. Okay, that's a sale. She's going to buy that one. Nope. Her hands were in the wrong position. And if you're an athlete, you know, form is everything. So, oh man, we got her going over the hurdles. The sky is great, but her arm wasn't quite right. So it was a no sale. I was crushed. High key. High key lighting is bright background like this, white. And to have truly high key lighting, the subject also has to be high key, not necessarily white like here, but pastels, lighter colors. If you're taking a picture, if she were in a black dress, it would be mixed key. So the true high key is the light background and light colors. And to get this was in the studio, pretty obvious. You meter this so that the background is 1 to 1.5 stops brighter than the subject. If you go brighter than that, you get blooming around the edges. And if you go less than that, it turns gray. But that is high key lighting. High school senior, I got an award for this picture. This was 2 strip lights off to the left and right. You can see that on the sides of his face. A beauty dish to light up his face in the front. And then I made that background and I made those light beams in Photoshop to match the light on the side of his face. And then I had this high school senior weightlifter. I think I had a body like that once. I'm not sure. Yeah, and that's the finished product there. So that's the raw image. And this is the effect of retouching. So that's going through and darkening every place that's dark in this image I darkened, and every place that is light in that image, I lightened. And obviously I turned it to black and white. Okay. So those are some of the basic lighting styles and the kind of things that I'll look for when we do your judging in April. It doesn't mean you have to. Don't hit those things too hard. I'm just showing you examples. I mean, I can be really lenient. The main thing is that, we're going to look at is it sharp? Is it in focus? I heard somebody mention color harmony. We look at color harmonies, what kind of impact the image has. Just be careful that you don't get those raccoon eyes. Make sure that the subject is at least as bright, if not brighter than the background. There's a successful photographer here in the Denver area. Many of you may know her, Sandy Putsch. She's not as active as she used to be, but she had the saying is shoot into the dark. So I would often try to, and you probably saw it in some of those images, make sure that the background itself was darker than the subject. And then you help that by throwing a little light in. Here's what I use. This is a 24-inch, 24-inch softbox. It's from Chimera, up there in Boulder area. And I actually won this at the PPA convention about 10 years ago, I guess, something like that. I'm walking down the aisle and the guy said, "Hey, come over, let me take your picture." I said, I don't want you to take my picture. He said, "No, we'll take your picture. And if your name is drawn, then you'll win this beauty dish." Oh, okay, what the hell? So he took my picture, and about 3 weeks later, I get a phone call. "Mr. Lawson, this is so-and-so from Chimera. You won the beauty dish." The reason it was a beauty dish is it came with a little insert inside that makes it a beauty dish where it blocks the direct light and sends it around the edges. But I took that out and I just use it as a octabox. But
If you're not Cliff, it goes for about $250.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Yeah, it's about $250. But I have I'm probably down to about 10 cents a person with this in terms of how much I've used it. And it doesn't come with the I forget what, does it even come with a speed ring? I don't remember. But I have put it in multiple different speed rings. This happens to be the Bowens mount that I can use with my Godox flashes. But I also have a speed ring that mounts to my Paul Buff Einsteins. So it's just a matter of changing out the speed ring to fit whatever lighting equipment you may have. So that's what I use. Any other questions on the basics at all?
I was going to say that modifier is great for going in the field, not necessarily for studio shoots.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's great because outside when we're using ambient light, it still lights up the whole subject. You know, he or she is lit top to bottom pretty much, but that just kind of fills in, makes the top a little brighter than the rest, separates them from the background. In the studio, I use it's like a 40-inch wide octabox, and I can't show you that because that's what's lighting me right now. So I can't show you that.
A couple of
That's what I use
questions.
in the studio.
Couple of questions. One from Elaine. When shooting outdoors, what is the best size softbox to use? I guess you kind of answered it. It's that 24-inch that you have or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't go any smaller than this. That's a good question. I wouldn't go any smaller than this necessarily, but and I wouldn't go too much larger. And the reason is the wind outside. And I wouldn't use an umbrella outside either for that very reason. This thing's a little smaller and it doesn't catch the wind like an umbrella does. So it's like the answers to a lot of photography questions, it depends. You know, just how much space. Do you have someone to hold it? You can use something a little bit bigger. If it's something you have to set down and you're out there by yourself, I would not go with anything any bigger than that 24 inches. It's going to get away from you. And
Okay. Then the other question from Cynthia Slade is, what is your feeling on street portraits? And Cynthia, you might have to clarify that. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
yeah,
You were muted, Cynthia. You're muted, Cynthia. Sorry.
Mute, okay.
There we go.
So sometimes I take portraits of people, just random people on the street,
okay.
especially when I'm traveling.
Yeah. I mean,
Street photography.
yeah,
but
it's street
street-
photography.
yeah.
Now, if you are talking to them and you're engaging them and they're looking at you and they know they're being picked, that's definitely a portrait. If you're just kind of shooting them and they don't know it, it might be a nice picture. I'm not sure that it really fits the portrait category, but I mean, that's still a nice picture. It could be. Is that your question?
Basically, I mean, you don't have a lot of control when you're doing that over lighting. You
That's right,
just
you
kind
don't.
of have to
You don't.
shoot when you shoot and when you don't.
That's very true, but you know, the image is what the image is, and nobody cares what the excuse is. I learned that when I was in college. There was a guy that he was the county court photographer, and he knew I was interested in photography. And he said, I'm going to give you a tip. He said, one of these days you're going to take a picture. You're going to climb a mountain and you're going to get bloody hands, and it rained and it snowed and the weather was miserable, and you took a picture of this animal and it's out of focus. Don't show it. Nobody cares about how much trouble you went to get to it. It doesn't matter. It's kind of the same thing with the street photography. You know, if it's poorly lit and it's out of focus, whatever, the image is what the image is, and it would be judged on what the image is. Does that make sense?
We've also done outdoor shoots, like we've gone downtown to get greedy buildings. We've used trains, all sorts
Yeah,
of
we have.
things as backgrounds, in kind of environmental type of lighting, art photography. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
But I still use the that softbox we use for
Yes.
almost everything. So I mean, taking pictures of people while you travel, those can be marvelous pictures, and I can score them really highly. But if if it's entered as a portrait, it has to meet certain, it has to look like they're part of the operation. Not just a candid shot.
Posed,
Yeah,
perhaps.
and preferably, yeah, some degree of posing. That's right. Anything else?
Nothing right now.
Okay. So what I like to do now is I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you some of the veteran portraits, and then we'll move into exactly how those have been, how I retouch those to get that look that I get with them. So let me try this again. If I can go to share screen. Oh, wait a minute. I think I learned how to do this. I want to open that up first.
Yeah.
I can be trained, you see. All right, let me go to Lone Tree program. There we go. All right. All right, here we go. So we see the studio there?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, I lost this studio. They closed. They were only charging $25 an hour, which is the reason they closed. It's really unfortunate. But this is my studio setup. I have a large softbox. I happen to be using my 2 foot by 3 foot as the main light that day. Overhead, a softbox overhead, a reflector on the right side for fill, and then another light that's being hidden by that reflector for a kicker light. This is up in Vail. The VFW in Vail brought me up 3 different times to take pictures of the VFW members, and we had use of the Colorado Mountain College up there. So I had this huge room. But there's the Octabox as my main light, hair light overhead, another strip box over to the right side as a kicker, and then the reflector. And you can see the computer there, shoot tethered, which is really great. I mean, that's not just for showing them, but for me to be able to look at a big image over there is it's a real game changer to making sure you've got the focus right, everything. It's terrific. And I use Capture One. If you're going to shoot tethered, Capture One is the bomb. It's way better than Lightroom. The only problem with it is it's not cheap, and if you've already got the Adobe subscription, you got Lightroom, and Lightroom works, but Capture One is really outstanding. So that's a good look at the session. The fellow that's in the picture there in the computer is a Marine, and here's the picture that we got from him. Oh, that was a PPA award winner. This is Wendell. Wendell passed away about 2 years ago. And in some of these, I use their medals. And left to right across, there's the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Purple Heart, an air medal with the number 41 on it. I was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, as was he. We got 1 air medal for every 25 hours of combat time. He has 41 of them.
Jeez.
This guy, he passed away a couple years ago. It's Saul Nova. He flew P-38s in the Pacific. And when we were setting up his appointment, he says, can I wear my leather jacket? I said, oh man, yeah, bring your leather jacket. He was so proud that he could still fit into his leather jacket. And that patch on there, the Headhunters, that patch is still in use today. That unit is still active. And that Headhunters patch is still the patch of that unit. Dick Sargent. Dick died last August. And he was a very good friend of mine, Naval Academy of 57. This is Jack Avalos. And I took this picture for the Professional Photographers of America as a PPA. This was taken, he was getting a life member or a life achievement award at the annual convention. And they asked me to take his picture. This was taken in a restaurant with a bunch of people. I wish I had taken a behind the scenes picture of this. There were probably 30 or 40 people around. Michael, were you there when I did this? Were you there?
I wasn't there for that one, but
You weren't?
no, I
Okay.
wish I could have been there. Yep.
Yeah, it's and I knew I was gonna be taking Jack's picture, and I knew he was unstable on his feet. So I had my knees replaced a year or so before that. So I brought my cane. So that's what his hands are on. I said, here, Jack, hold on to this. And he put his hands on that. And here's the case of where he's not looking at the camera. So he's looking off to the side. He's looking at somewhere else. And this was the picture they used for his award. But he is a veteran also. That's why I included him here. He told me he wanted to be a pilot in World War II. But because he was a Mexican, no way that he was going to get to flight training. That was just not going to happen. Speaking of which, this is Colonel Harvey. He lives here in Denver. He's one of the last of the Tuskegee Airmen. I did not take this in the studio. I took this when he gave a talk. I just had my camera along, and it's done with the flash on the camera, so it's not a great image, but it's an image of him. And he also gave a talk about, it's just disgusting. These black pilots were outscoring the white pilots. They had a fewer dropout rate than the white pilots, but the Pentagon couldn't handle that. So the word came down that you need to start failing more of these black pilots because they can't possibly show up the white boys. He said in his unit, one of the kids was drummed out the day of graduation because they found a spot on his uniform. So they kicked him out. And if you're familiar with the Tuskegee Airmen, they were flying P-51 Mustangs with painted the tails red. They were the red tails. And the bomber pilots didn't know these were black pilots. They wanted the red tails to accompany their bombing missions because how effective they were. And his hat here, it says, Top Gun winner 1949. The very first Top Gun competition, the Tuskegee Airmen won it. That award was hidden away. It was not given to them until I think sometime in the late 90s that somebody finally said, this is an abomination that we did this. And they were actually shown the award because it was tucked away as if there were no winner in 1949 because they were black pilots that did it. Absolutely shameful. Of course, we can't teach that in high school now because that would be critical race theory. Can't do that. This is when he came in with that uniform. Oh man, this is going to be a great picture with that color and that uniform. That's just gorgeous. And this was another PPA winner. Sandy Treat, he was 10th Mountain Division. He died about 2 years ago. This one was interesting. I took his picture, and when we were just about done, he said, do you mind if we get a picture of my wife? She had passed away a couple of years earlier. And I said, no, let's do that. And he had her flag and put that. So I got a picture of Nelson and his wife with her flag. Dale died last August, and he flew in Korea and in Vietnam, and he actually flew that F-86, that one, the airplane that's on the closest one on the left. He flew that in he and some other guys in a movie. They were the pilots for a movie that was being done, and he was one of the guys that flew that. Some of the stories these guys have they're amazing, just outstanding. This gal here, she said, I didn't have a uniform, Cliff. All I have is my hat. She said, I got off the airplane in San Francisco and people spit on me. I threw my uniform away. So I don't have one. And right as she told me that story, I took this picture. Coast Guard. This guy wouldn't stop talking. He was a Special Forces Green Beret. And brand new second lieutenant, first lieutenant in Vietnam. And he kept talking about how he wished he had had more experience and things he wished he had done better to save more of his guys that he was, for whom he was the leader. He just kept talking. And here again, I think the picture with him not looking at the camera is the right one. This story will curl your hair. It's he was a scout pilot. He's down low and bullet came up through his knee, up his thigh. All of us helicopter pilots wore our pistols in our crotch because we didn't have any armor there. So his pistol stopped the bullet, but it destroyed his knee. And he said, I don't remember getting the helicopter on the ground, but he said, I did. He says, the next thing I can barely remember, he said, is being in the Huey, going to the MASH and wondering, why is this kid poking at my arm? Well, what he was doing was trying to find a place to stick in the blood expander. He said, I remember being taken out of the helicopter and looking at the side of the Huey, and it was all red. He said, with my blood. And they said he died twice on the way to the hospital. It turns out that he's the only helicopter pilot that the FAA allowed to recertify to fly helicopters with an above the knee amputation. He flew for XL, I think for XL, one of the energy companies putting towers up in the mountains for years. F-111 pilot. There's two of her because two different expressions. This one, and then with this squint, the badass squint. Navy chief. This woman, when she saw her pictures, she didn't like them. It's the only person that ever didn't like their pictures. And she said, I must be too vain, but I think I look old. She's in her mid-70s. And I was giving a class on my veterans this year or so ago. And somebody said, does anybody ever not like their pictures? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have one. I had this handy. And the women in the class said, oh my God, I hope when I get to that age, I look that good. And she does. She's a beautiful lady, but she didn't like him. This guy was a first responder to the Columbine shooting, but he was also that Rescue Pedro. That was the firefighting helicopter, rescue helicopter that the Air Force used in Vietnam. First Marine Division, he drove the amphibious tanks. So he landed at Guadalcanal and a couple other battles and ended up in Okinawa. So from Guadalcanal to Okinawa. And I think he's over, if he's still alive, he's over 100 by now.
Hey, Cliff,
Yeah.
did you tell them why you took on this project?
No, but thank you for reminding me. While we're looking at Marshall here, the reason I'm doing this is back in January of 2017, I went to a funeral of a gentleman who, he was an Air Force pilot. He had flown in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. In Vietnam, he was an advisor to the Vietnamese Air Force. So he had quite a storied career. And at his funeral, the funeral picture on the little, the program was this really crappy picture. I mean, he's holding a drink. There's a lamp growing out of one shoulder. There's the person that was beside him. You could see the person, they had to kind of cut this other person out. I looked at that picture. I thought, man, this is not right. But I'm a portrait photographer. I can fix this. So I belong to a couple organizations. One of them is the Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association. At our next meeting, I mentioned this. I said, so I'd like to take your pictures. It's free, no charge. I'll give you two 11 by 14s, but it doesn't mean it's for your funeral. The point is the family didn't have a good picture when they needed it. Well, getting the first couple of guys in was like pulling teeth until they saw the pictures. And then it really spread. So now as of right now, I've done, I think, a little over 150 of these veterans. So it's worked out.
Cliff and I both volunteer our time for this project.
Yeah, we don't get paid for it. Occasionally, somebody will buy some extra. To be perfectly honest, I give them 2 11x14 prints. But if they want to buy some extras, I do charge for it. Greatly reduced price, but there are expenses in the project, so it covers some of those. This is an interesting story. A young guy from the Iraq-Afghanistan war. He brought that flag in. He says, "This is the flag of my buddy that committed suicide." And as he sat down and he looked at the flag, I took this picture. And if you look at his wrist, you can see he's got the bracelet of his buddy. And in the print, you can see his buddy's name on the bracelet. I love this picture. Okay. So before I get into the retouching and stuff, any questions, comments, personal insults on that?
There's one question. Your portraits have amazing texture. I have always erred on the side of removing texture from the face, especially for women. Will you talk through the trade-offs and how you decide how much texture to add or remove?
Yes, I absolutely will do that. In fact, one of the things I do, and you're going to see this when I go through this process, is I actually add texture to the faces, not the women. I ain't stupid. But I add texture to the faces of the men for sure. So in retouching, we want to get that three-dimensionality. And I do this more with the veterans than like the high school seniors. High school seniors have great skin. You got to be careful. You don't want to over retouch them. But for a true portrait, I mean, real portraits, not high school senior stuff. That's a little different. But you have to be careful with some of that. The mom will say, but there's shadows on the side of her face. You know, I go, Mom, do you have any idea how much money I've spent to learn how to put those shadows right there? Doesn't mean anything. You know, they don't like a lot of shadows usually. With the veterans, they're all low key. Shadows are deep. I shoot it that way, and I accentuate those shadows in the retouching. So we'll go through that. Some of the retouching basics. As most of you know, I hope, that the lighter portions of an image advance, the darker portions of an image recede. So to give that face dimensionality, we want to lighten and darken the face appropriately. And what we do with retouching is exactly what women do with makeup. I watched one of the models I shot once putting on her makeup. I think she is doing with chemicals what I do with retouching. And that is to make things lighter. There are 5 planes of the face that you want to be lighter: the center of the forehead, the bridge of the nose, the cheekbones, the apples of the cheeks, and the chin. The areas beside those, you want to darken a little bit. So you want to darken the sides of the forehead. You can darken the sides of the nose. You can darken under the apples of the cheeks, under here. That's exactly what makeup does. And you may or may not want to kind of darken along the maybe the chin line down here, but you brighten 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I say 5. 2. Yeah, and you want to darken the areas beside those. Okay, so I'll show you how I do that. See anything else I want to talk about before I get started with that? Oh, you know, before I go on, let me just take a little break here. I don't do workshops. I don't have anything to advertise. So, but I'm going to advertise something. Since I bought a Z9, my D850 is going to be for sale. And I can, in fact, let me, here it is. It is virtually pristine. There's not a mark on it. And the reason is it's always on a tripod. It doesn't get manhandled, whether it's outside or it's in a studio. I look to see if there's any scratches, nothing. And right now, if you're interested in moving up to a high megapixel camera, when this came out, it got the highest image quality score from DxO that there was. It outscored not Sony, Canon, everybody. It's fantastic. B&A or B not B&H, KEH is selling it for $1,900 used. And that doesn't include the battery grip and the L bracket. So I would sell it. If someone's interested, I would sell this for $2,000, and that includes the $400 battery grip and the L bracket. If you're interested, I mean, it's a phenomenal camera. Eventually, I'll probably end up selling it to KEH. I've sold other stuff to them, but I thought before I do that, I would offer that if you want a really cool camera. I'm also thinking about selling my 85 millimeter lens. I've got the Nikon 105, which is a real beast, and I don't need both of them. This is still selling new for $1,700 or $1,600. I'd be looking at $900, and it's not a mark on it. So that's my ad. Okay. Oh, one other thing. A lot of these, I was doing this veteran project for a couple of years, and I know many of you know Jeff Johnson. And Jeff said, hey, you need to look up a guy called Glenn Dewis, Dewis. Glenn is Glyn. He's doing a project on World War II veterans. So I looked him up, and he has a book out called Photograph Like a Thief. And in that book, he has how he goes through his veteran portraits. And World War II inspired, it says there. And it didn't change a lot of what I do, but there are a couple techniques that I'm going to show you that I learned out of this book in terms of color and adding that texture that I don't know that I would have discovered without this book. So I want to give Glenn a shout out for that, because I didn't discover this on my own. I discovered it through that book. Okay, let me see now. Let me pull up the.
Hey, Cliff, while you're doing that, one quick question. What is your preferred lens length, probably for portraits?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. Virtually all of those, virtually every single picture that you saw were shot with my D850 and the 70-200 zoom.
Okay. I see Phil answered that too in the chat, so.
All right, let me pull up the.
Oh, and somebody, Elaine posted that Glenn has a YouTube channel. She posted the link for folks too.
Yeah, he's all over YouTube. Yeah, he's a very engaging guy. But even if I say so myself, I think my veterans pictures are better than his.
No bias.
I do. No bias whatsoever. Nope. All right, let me see here. Let's let me do this. Let me pull up. Okay, let me pull up Bridge here. And if I can go to share screen. Okay, you see the Bridge?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to use this guy here. Okay. I'm going to start out by showing you this. This is this was the final image here. Now we're going to start from scratch, but this is what we want to get to. And here is the raw file. Okay. So we're going to go from this to that. I can't do that. Okay. So here's, let me get this out of the way here. Okay. So I'll zeroed everything out on the on Photoshop here. Now I use Photoshop. I do not use Lightroom. I don't like it. Never have. Other people swore by it. But every time I've tried it, I look at the image and go, I know what I want to do, and it's not here. Now I also know that Lightroom's gotten a lot better over the years. But everything we do here in Adobe Camera Raw is identical, and I'm sure you know this, is identical to Lightroom. So with virtually every image that I start out with, first of all, this is exposed okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong. look at the histogram up here. It's a lot of dark, but here's a lot of dark. I mean, I shoot low key. It's dark, and that's all there is to it. But what I learned years ago is a good starting point for most images is to come in here and reduce the highlights and bring up the shadows. And it's not,
Hey Cliff, for
Sure.
some reason, we're not seeing the histogram. We're not seeing the camera. We're just seeing bridge, so we're not seeing camera raw. Must have to
oh,
do
you're
it.
not. Well,
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right. I guess I need to share it again. I'm sorry. Let's do
I
that.
just,
then.
Yeah, and I know sometimes I have that happen if I'm like moving from one program over to, even if I'm in like say Photoshop and then I put it in Nick Silver Effects Pro or something like that, I have to like reopen it or whatever. And that's,
All right, all right. I think what I have to do then is open Photoshop and then stop share,
there you go.
start again. Wait a minute.
I'm not familiar with the Zoom on a Mac, but on Windows, you can share your desktop. So whatever window is up front is being shared.
Well, it should be this. I would think it would be the same. Let's see.
Because you have the choice of either sharing an individual window or the entire desktop.
All right, let's see. So if I do desktop, do you see my desktop now?
See your desktop and we see bridge, and then behind it we see behind that bridge. There's if you click on that, click on the tab, that might bring it up.
Yeah,
Oh,
now
We'll
you should be good.
minimize
Now-
bridge. Maybe minimize
Let's see
bridge.
if I bring up Photoshop now.
Hey, there you go. Bridge is still behind it, but oops.
Let me see if I do. Does Photoshop show up now?
Yeah, there we go. Now we can see.
That's it.
Camera raw.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the help. All
Sure,
right.
sure.
And if you maximize that window, we'll see just Photoshop. Oh,
Well, if I
I'm sorry.
maximize it, I'll lose.
Oh, you're right. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'll be quiet now.
Yeah. No, it's all right.
Oh, thank you.
All help is accepted, even if it's wrong. You know, we can always back it up. Okay. So reduce the highlights and increase the shadows. How much depends on the image. In this one, I went all the way with everything. I will then come down, and with these guys, I will actually, even to start with, I'm going to come up on the texture just a little bit, up on the clarity a little bit, and let me. Most men, this guy isn't too bad. Most men have kind of a ruddy complexion, a little red in there. And I will come down to get rid of that. I'll come down to the color mixer, go to hue, and I'll pull those over. See, I didn't center those out. This is the way he looked initially. There's a little bit of red in there. And I'll pull the hue over just a little bit and the red and a little bit on the orange. Then you come up to the saturation. It comes those out to the left a little and down to the left a little. And it takes that ruddiness out. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's come back to basics here. Okay, color temperature looks good. I'm not going to fuss with that. Everything else looks fine. Okay, we're going to open it up in Photoshop now. We're going to get busy. Okay. All right. Okay, so one of the first things I do with everybody is it's a fine line here. We don't want to make them look like they're 25, but we want to get rid of some of the obvious things. You know, when I look at you, when you look at me, we don't see a lot of this stuff. We really don't. But boy, when you fix it in a picture, it's there. So a lot of blemishes and circles under the eyes and dark puffy eyes, that really shows up. So what I will do I would get rid of these or minimize these dark circles, not necessarily get rid of them. And here's how I do that. This is something that if you've never heard of this, you're going to love this. We're going to go first to the stamp tool, the clone tool. And we are going to, I have it set down here in tool presets. We're going to use lighten at 33%. If you don't, so to set that, you'd come up here to, lighten in the mode and set it at about somewhere between 30 and 40%. What lighten does, if you haven't heard of this, is it only lightens pixels that are darker than what you sample from. So it only lightens pixels that are darker than the sample area. So if we come down here and sample right here, we can come up here and paint over those circles and they go away. But if there's any dark pixels down here, it ignores them. So that's fine. It's still there. It just doesn't yell at you. Let's come over to this eye. Same thing here. We're gonna kind of take from a lighter area here, and I'm just gonna kind of go over this a little bit. Sample, paint, sample, paint. And again, it's not gone. We just kind of minimize it. Not quite so obvious. For retouching them, we're going to go through and I'll pick up the transient, like, shaving cuts. We get rid of those, little pimples, blackheads, that type of stuff. I'll get rid of those. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can use that lighten technique, that works. You can use the patch tool. Patch tool works great. We'll come down, just circle that, take it away, circle that, take it away. He doesn't have too many. He's in pretty good shape here. Yeah. Zit there, zit there, zit there. And I would go through the whole face doing that. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes doing it. But clean up the face with all the transient stuff. And this one is a little, these eyes aren't really quite sharp. The image is okay, but they really are sharp. If you are familiar with some of the Topaz plugins, they have Sharpen AI, which would work on this, but they'll come out with a new one just a couple months ago. And it's called Photo AI, Artificial Intelligence, and it works. So we're going to do that. I'm going to come here to Topaz Photo AI. Let it load. And it automatically looks at your image. And if it needs noise reduction, it does it. If it needs sharpening, it'll do it. It sounds, it can't be that good. Yes, it is. So I'm going to come down here and I want to sharpen this a little bit more. So it doesn't think it needs much because it's not turned on automatically. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to up the strength just a little bit. And we're going to let it do its thing. And I think it is done. And we're going to say save to Adobe Photoshop. Da, 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 da. If you guys haven't tried this, it's amazing.
Have to download the trial and give it a shot. I think they give you 30 days on a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, they do. Okay. Now let's see
wow.
if we can. I don't know if this is going to show how well this is going to show up.
It looks pretty noticeable from what we can see.
I think you can. Yeah, you're right. You can. I was going to go back to, but you can see. I mean, it's fantastic. And obviously, it's not going to save a truly way out of focus picture. But when you just miss it a little bit, it's magic. And if it over sharpens stuff, what I would have done, I didn't do it. I'm not going to go back and repeat it. Ordinarily, I would have done this on its own layer. And because if it over sharpens other things, I could use a mask and get rid of it, but it's fine. So, but that recovered my eyes for me. All right. Now, one of the most important parts of any portrait are the eyes. Okay, here's the one thing I am going to do more than once. So pay attention. So we're going to choose the elliptical marquee here. And as I'm sure most of you know, if you put it here and you drag it out, it doesn't stay in place. If you hold down the option key, however, the option key, it moves out from where you clicked. And if you hold down the shift key, it stays a circle. So we're going to do that right there. We're going to make that little right there, like that. Boom. If you're not quite right, you can use the arrow keys to move it. We want to leave just a little on the outside because the natural look of an eye is, it might be lighter in here, but we want that the darker part on the outside. So circular elliptical marquee, hold down option and shift, click on in the center of the eye, drag out and make a selection. Then we want to come to, let's see if I can to oh, it's so aggravating working on a laptop after you're used to being on your desktop, isn't it? Okay, so we want the adjustments. Here we go. Come on to the adjustment layers. And we're going to choose this one right down here called selective color. Now, when I click on this, that circle is going to go away. But it just gave us a mask up here. And it gave us, let me do that again. I'm going to do that again so you understand. Go back. We're going to click on selective color. Click on it. It's going to give us a mask. It's also going to bring up this properties. And if we come down to go to neutrals here, forget all those colors, go to neutrals and then come down to black and look what we can do to the eye here. So we want to take that iris and just kind of lighten that. It's all, there's no formula here. Just lighten it a little bit so it gives the eye some life. Okay, done. Come back to the background layer. Go over to the other eye. Select M for the marquee tool. Option, shift. In the middle of the eye. Drag out. Stop. Come down to our adjustment. Here we go. Click on that. That goes away. Come down to our properties. Lighten up that eye just a little bit right in there. Now you notice up here, it goes into the eye, into the skin. Well, we don't want that. So what we do is come over, select that mask, select your brush, B for brush. You want a black brush. So make sure that your brush is black here. And then we can B for brush. And you can come in and you can get rid of the spill. So then what I will do is come over to layers, hold down the command, click on that Command G, makes a group. And now you can turn that on and off. And you can use the opacity. If it's a little bit too bright, you can dial it down, dial it up. I'm going to take it back just a little bit. And there. So we've kind of given the eyes a little life. And then we want to lighten the whites. Now, this, you have to be really careful here. Some people go in there and they whiten the whole eye. Don't do that. All we want to do is lighten the bottom half to the bottom third. Because looking here before we do that, notice it's darker up here because the eyebrows are shielding the top of the sphere. So what we want to do, I'm going to go to the dodge tool. I want to set it to mid-tones and about 20%. So I'll just type in 2. Here we go, 2. All right. And we're going to come down with that brush. Where's the brush? Here we go. Brush. 20%. And we're going to do the, come down here. In fact, I'm going to flatten the whole thing here. Here we go. We don't need it anymore. We're going to come down. We're going to paint in just that lower third. Whoops. Made a mistake there. Hang on a second. I don't want to be there. I want to be here. There we go. I'm sorry. I'm going to brighten that. Using the dodge tool, just brighten that lower third. Okay. That's it on the eyes. Okay. Now let's do the retouching, the skin. Let's see here. I have actions written for this. Curves, dodge, and burn. I'm gonna go to my layers here again. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do it from scratch to show you how I got there. That's the only fair thing to do. We're gonna let me do a new layer, Command J, right? We're gonna take that layer, I'm gonna say Command M for curves, and we're gonna darken that layer. Not like that. I'm gonna say, okay. We're going to hold down the Option key on this one and click on the, hang on. Why is this not doing what I want it to do here? I'm only doing this live. What could possibly go wrong? So if we make this, I want that. There we go. Okay. So I put a black mask over that. So that remember, in the mask, the black hides, the black conceals. So now we're going to come back to the background layer. I'm going to say Command J and Command M, and we're going to brighten this one. This is going to be our dodge layer. Okay. Let's call that dodge. Dodge, okay. And I'm going to come down and, okay. So now we've got these two, the dodge and the burn. Here's the burn layer here. B-U-R-N, burn. This is how you make them. All right. So we go to the burn layer. Now we're going to go to the brush tool. And we're going to set that to about 6%. Here, set that to about 6%. And we're going to, everything on his face that's dark, we're going to darken it more. All right, so get these out of the way here. There's our brush. And we're gonna, the brush needs, we have a black mask, so we need a white brush. So it needs to be white. And we're gonna come down here and just to, we are darkening it with it in 6%. It does, oops, I need to be on the mask here. At 6%, it takes multiple burns, multiple paths to do this. We keep pushing that. Yeah, it's darkening it. When you go on and off, we're gonna take all this area, darken that, darken under the cheeks like that, darken here. I'm gonna darken this side of the nose just a little bit. Darken out here, darken here. We'll keep doing that. Now we're gonna go to the dodge. And what do we want to be brighter? Center of the forehead, ridge of the nose, apples of the cheeks, and the chin. So he's got a cap on, so that kind of means this isn't quite as important, but we'll kind of brighten this up just a little bit in here. We're gonna brighten up the cheeks a little, brighten up here. It takes multiple passes, and if you don't think it's working, you need to click on the mask over here and see it go on and off. Are there? Yep, you can see it under his eye. Yep, it's working. Okay, I'm not going to keep doing that. Bridge of the nose and the chin. So I would usually spend about 10 or 15 minutes darkening, lightening, checking it with turning these on and off until we really sculpt the face. Okay, but I'm not going to bore you with it. But that's how you do that. That's pretty much the face part. Now, oh no, wait. The texture, that's right. Okay. Now, I don't know that you can still buy this or not. Topaz had, I'm going to bring it up. Topaz had, let's see. Yeah, they had a thing called Topaz Studio 2, and it had a section in there for precision contrast, and it really helped add texture to the face. But I don't, unless you already have it, I don't think you can get that anymore. They've switched to that other thing I was showing you. So since we don't have that, what we can do, I'm going to say, go to make a new layer. Oops, wait a minute. Pardon me. Let me flatten this. Let's make a new layer and go to camera raw filter. Camera raw filter. And in the camera raw filter, we have that texture command. So I would come down to that texture command and I would bump that up. You can see that, you can see how that adds grit in the face there. It does about the same thing that precision contrast did with the Topaz. Okay. Okay, so that really does add texture to the face. It gives it a little grittier look, don't you think? Look at that in there. Now, we would never do that to women unless we want to get shot, but with the guys, it works. So that's pretty much the basics for it. Then all of these portraits have their own backdrop. These are shot on a gray backdrop in the studio, but I just use that as a vehicle for my own backdrops, and every veteran gets his own, and they're all custom made for each person. I can never duplicate the background. And I'm going to show you how I do it, because you can do this yourself. The first thing we're going to do is use the select subject in Photoshop, and it's amazing. Now, this dialog box you see here, the select subject gives you two choices. You can let your computer do the selection, or you can let the cloud do it. I let the cloud do it. It's a little more accurate. It takes about 3 or 4 seconds longer, but it's look at this. Look at the selection that this thing made. Then I will come up here to the select dialog, come down to select and mask, holding the shift key. That's really important. Hold down the shift key and you get this dialog, and bring the radius up about halfway. It just, if the person has a lot of hair and stuff instead of this cap, it will make sure it includes the little flyaway hairs. And the smooth and feather, I will bring them up just a little bit. And I know that only from experimentation. There's no, it was just done by eyeball. And we're going to say, okay. Oh, and then we have output to a selection. So we're going to say, okay, And we have this selection that we can now say Command J and put it on its own layer. So if we take these away, there's our selection. Okay. All right. Now, I have backgrounds that I have made. I'm gonna go to Bridge here, and we're gonna go to I have a bunch of backgrounds that over the years I have put together, and you can find these all over the internet. I mean, they're all over the place. Let me go to my other one, that's the favorite textures. I think I have that. Yeah, favorite textures. Here we go. Come on. Oh, this flag, by the way, I just made this in Photoshop. Come on, folks. That's it. Why aren't we getting? Here we go. All right, let's just pick one. Let's pick this one. No, I don't want to use that one. Let's go back to, let's use this one. So you can get on the internet, you can find textures, you can make textures. This one, if we look at my layers here, this one consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different layers on this one. So it's a pretty big file. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to drag these over into my picture, say yes. Come on. Okay. So I'm going to bring our subject up to the top here. There's this background, but what the reason they are special is that I can then go through and by clicking different layers on and off, you can change the whole look of the background, different, lighten it, darken it. You can go to this layer, you can go to your Command U, you can change the hue, you can change the saturation on it, you can change whether it's darker or lighter. You can add different textures to it, but I will try to get a texture that fits each guy here, and I'm not going to do that tonight, obviously. So we've got a nice background there for him. It's kind of a military brown. And now what I will do, and this is what I learned in the Glenn Dewis book, to give it kind of a military look. In fact, let me just flatten everything. It's going to make things a little smaller here. To give it this kind of military look, we go to, I'll show you where they are. Let's go to this thing right here where it says color lookup. And if you click on the color lookup table, if you click on that, it's going to take you to things that have really strange names. Let me see if I can, how can I get this to show you here there? Wait a minute. Hang on a second here. I'm doing this wrong, folks. Okay. All right. Let me try this again. There we go. Load abstract profile. Or load LUT. Nope. Excuse me. So you get, here it says early edgy amber. Look what it does to the picture. You think, well, why would I want to use edgy amber? Well, if you come up to this and change the opacity of it to very low, you can add these very subtle color tones to your picture. In Glenn Lewis's book, he sets up the LUTs that he uses for this. And I'm going to take this away and I'm going to show you, where are my actions? Here are the actions. Let's see here. Do I have that set in here? You know, I think I opened the wrong version of Photoshop here. Maybe it's in the other. All right, see what I'm going to do. Because I want to show you this. I'm going to save this. Actually, we're done with this. I'm going to show you in this picture. Here, this picture is with Glenn Lewis's 3 different of those lookup tables. There's the edgy amber, there's a foggy night, there's one other one. If you buy his book, you can get this all. I would suggest that you use this thing on your pictures, pull this up, start playing with some of these, and by changing the blend modes, soft light, hard light, opacity, you can do some amazing things with your pictures. I mean, it's really, really cool. So this then becomes the final image that we were working on right there. Not the same background, but you can see the grit in the face, the detail in the eyes. And that's how I do my veterans. Just like that.
Very cool. Quick question from Michael Rhino. He wanted to know, are those lookup tables, the LUTs, is standard ones that are available in Photoshop?
Yes. Yeah, you can buy or get additional LUTs, but the ones that I use and the ones that Glenn Lewis suggests you use to get that kind of a look is they are all the standard ones that come with Photoshop. So yeah, you don't have to buy anything.
Okay. And another question was, do you ever use a black and white layer on low opacity over the top like you do with your LUTs?
Yeah, I do. Yes. That can be, I'll use the Nick Silver Effects. Take that black and white layer, lay it over the color layer and change the opacity. Yeah, I do that. It can be very cool. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Okay. How do you get the topaz adjustments in a Photoshop layer? I think it's part of topaz.
I'm not sure. Ask the question again.
Well, it said, how do you get topaz adjustments in a Photoshop layer? And you just opened it up through Photoshop, didn't you?
Yeah, well, you use the Command or Control J to duplicate the layer and then open the appropriate topaz product and apply it to that layer. Does that answer that question?
Joe, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, the topaz, I don't know. I have it on my desktop machine. Evidently, I didn't put it on here. I do have that older Topaz Studio 2 with it has the sharpen in it. It has some other things. It has that precision contrast. It's pretty cool. But I don't think, unless you already own it, that you can get it. But if you can, it's pretty neat. But the new one, the Topaz Adjust AI, well, you saw it's kind of magic. I mean,
One other question is, my understanding that if you add textures to your photos, that you must use textures that you created. If you are entering the photo in competition, is that your understanding? So for competition, the textures you use must be ones you've created to be, and I'm assuming she's talking about PPA.
Yeah, I would assume that's the question also. That's a good question. I don't know.
I
Some of
think
those
I
I
can,
created myself, some of them I purchased. Um,
I think I can answer that, or help answer it anyways, and that is that
Yeah, please.
for that, like a textured background and so forth that you're using there, you can use one that that you purchased and that you didn't create, or something that's out there and so forth, and that as long as your subject is still your subject, and that you kind of locked into that part of it. But as far as those textures, I'm pretty sure you can use something that is that's purchased or something that you didn't create yourself.
I'm pretty sure you're right, because if you're not, I owe a bunch of mirrored images back to them. Because I'll bet I've gotten, Jesus, since I started this project, I haven't counted, but I'll bet I've gotten 15 mirrored images out of those veterans, at least.
Right.
Every one of them uses those textures, some
Right.
of which I've made, some of which I've purchased. So yeah, it's
Yeah, no, I'm almost 100% positive that their rules allow that anyways, and that. So you're good with that. Those merits are still.
Phew, I don't have to turn them back in. That's a relief.
The a couple a thing I was going to point out real quick is you mentioned that Topaz Studio 2. I know I have that on mine, and Carino, who's on here tonight, I know he uses those, not necessarily the same ones that you talked about, but some of the programs within that I know he uses on some of his images. And then one other thing I was going to point out too real quick is you went over that real slick technique when you were lightening the lines under the veteran's eyes and that. And
Yeah,
that same technique also works well, even like for landscapes or any time where you have, high contrast scene and you get those halos that are on the edges of scenes. You can use that lighten or darken with that clone stamp tool to go along those outlines. And it's very effective for that also.
yeah. About a year ago, I did a workshop down in the Springs for the Guild, and I mentioned that for you landscape photographers, you start getting halos around edges. Maybe you've done some sharpening, whatever, and you get halos. That lighten at 33% will save your bacon, because you can get rid of those halos in a flash. By the way, the opposite also works, and that is you use darken mode, and darken only darkens pixels that are lighter than where you sample from. So between those two, you can fix a lot of problems that using the clone stamp as a clone, using it in the normal mode, you can't possibly fix. So yeah, it's pretty handy. Yeah.
I don't see any other questions. Anybody else questions for Cliff?
The other thing I was going to point out too is you mentioned that you don't do workshops, but I've attended one of yours. So the background screen that I have on there, except that Zoom is cropping that. I couldn't get it to show up the right way. But this is one that Cliff had done in a workshop. And literally it was just a real quick, he's kind of testing his gear out, I think, or whatever in that. And I was the subject. And so that was a headshot that he took about, I guess, a little over a year ago or so, something like that in a workshop.
Yeah, well, yeah. It was last January, actually, when we did that, I think. I think, wasn't that the headshot thing we did up in Thornton,
Yeah.
or wherever it was?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for some of the glitches, but I'm used to working on that huge monitor, and all of a sudden I'm trying to do this on this tiny screen. But I hope you were able to follow what I was doing. I hope it made sense to you guys.
Yeah. Charlie Lehman said you can find many textures in the public domain. Shadow House online is a good source. So
Oh yeah, in fact, I have some of theirs. Yep, that's right.
thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Yeah, I've got some of the Shadow House, some of those Shadow House textures. Yep.
Okay. the, I don't.
Oh, one question I had also here real quick was you were talking about light meters and that, and I know that you use those like in studio when you're using studio strobes and so forth and that. Do you use those also? What you mentioned that you do a lot of your outdoor photography and you're using strobes outdoors and that. Are you also using the light meter for your outdoor stuff?
No, that's a good question. No, I don't. And first of all, yes, I absolutely use it in the studio. Just a quick story here. A couple of years ago, I'm watching an instructional video by Scott Kelby, and we all know Scott Kelby. And the point of it was why you should shoot tethered and you don't need a light meter. It took him, by his own admission, 20 pictures to get the lighting right. By shooting, changing, shooting, adjusting, shooting, adjusting. I will guarantee you, and Phil Blyton can vouch for this, when the subject sits down after medium lights, the first shot is correct every time. Now, you may have to alter for a blonde or bald. You know, if you've got a hairline like mine, I might adjust the hairline a little, but in the studio, a light meter is gold. Now, outside, pardon me, no, I don't. And the reason is today's metering and the cameras are phenomenal. I use the Godox system. I used to use the Nikon SB800s, but either one will work. And I use the TTL, the through the lens metering. And all it takes is maybe 1 or 2 shots to adjust the lighting a little bit, and then you're good to go. And there's no need fussing with the light meter outside. Just use TTL is magic. So no, that's how I do it.
Right.
Very good. I don't
Anything
see
else?
any other questions. Cliff,
And-
thank you
and-
very much. Go ahead.
One other point I was going to bring up real quick before we break. Once again, thank you, everybody. This is a good turnout. I think we still have close to 40 people that are on there, and a lot of very good complimentary comments throughout the night in the chat. And one thing, I know we have a few guests in that, and so for those that are interested in joining Lone Tree Photo Club, go to the we have a website, Lone Tree Photography Club, and there's a place there to go ahead and sign up as a member, and it really is pretty affordable. It's $25 a year for one person, and if you have a spouse that also wants to join, I think it's $35 for a couple and that. But very good, and we've got a lot of good programs coming up in that. So,
one other thing before we sign off, if anybody's interested in that Nikon 850, I've got everything it came with. I mean, you'd be stepping up to a great camera. And the only reason I'm selling it is I got the Z9 now, and I don't need 2 high megapixel cameras. I mean, even my wife said, "Are you sure you want to sell that?" Yeah, it would I just wouldn't use it much, and you'd be getting a great camera to if you're interested.
It's a tough choice. And speaking from my experience in that Nikon D850 is a very good camera, even though it's been around for a few years, but yours looked like it was in amazing condition. And
yeah, there's not a mark on it. Yeah.
And they really are, take really good images in that. And if you're interested in selling that Z9, I'm interested in that one too.
No. The Z9 is the bomb.
I've heard that. Yeah. So anyways, but going back to it, that D850, and for the price point that you were talking about, and for the condition that it's in, somebody's going to get a good deal. Whoever, I already have one, so I don't need to buy. It's very.
Well, I'm not going to get on eBay, or I'm not going. In fact, if I can't sell it to somebody local that I know, I am not going to get in a situation where they want to call you and say, "Well, you come up and show me that, or will you send it to me and I want to try it?" No. I'll send it to KEH before I go through that brain damage. So no. That's it.
Great.
Well, thanks, Cliff. I appreciate you doing that. I'm glad everybody's safe at home and doesn't have to deal with the roads and all the shenanigans that are going on. But we do live in Colorado, and that is what happens here, correct? Whether we like it or not, it does snow.
So somebody, oh, you did record this, right? You did, yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
we
you did. That's
record it,
right.
because
Yeah, good.
we now have to put these behind on a members only page with a password because in the, they made changes last year that required anybody getting over $600 on PayPal or anything had to report it. So we're trying to become a 503c social club. And so I think
Oh,
to make the IRS happy, there's certain things that have to be member only benefits.
yeah.
So anyway,
So do
it'll
I get
be-
royalties? Do I get royalties on this, Bruce?
well, it is past, but you can ask, I guess, what would you consider a royalty? We can give you a crown. We could call you your highness. Would that be good?
Yeah, thanks.
But no, I appreciate it. Cliff, it's great. Your images always are good, and the stories behind your images are great as well.
Oh, there's one other question here I see. They want to know if I use aperture priority or manual. I use manual always.
Okay.
And the reason for that, there's a reason. Here's the teaching point. In the studio, it's a no-brainer. You want to use manual. But outside, I use it because you want to be able to darken the background and lighten the subject, and you want to be able to control that. So we know that shutter speed doesn't alter exposure at all of the flash. That's all aperture. So by balancing those, if we went back and looked at those senior pictures you saw, you would see that the backgrounds are all darker than the subject. And the way you do that is by shooting manual, exposing for the subject, and then using the aperture to keep that background dark and let the TTL give you the exposure for the face. So that answers that question.
Okay.
And we all get to see you on April 5th as a judge for our competition. So hopefully we've all taken good notes tonight, and we'll have our portrait images ready for April 5th.
Yeah, and hopefully we won't have to do it by Zoom.
Right.
You don't have an
Right.
April snowstorm. You never know. You just never know.
You don't know. No, you're right. You don't.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good night, and we'll see everybody on the 1st of February for our first competition, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Appreciate it. And we'll see you in April.
All right. Thanks again, Cliff. Take care. Bye, everybody.